I first encountered Linton Kwesi Johnson's poetry in the early 1990s. A very good friend introduced me to him, and I first couldn't believe that I didn't know this poet who, in addition to being, of course, a literary poet, was recorded and had sold by that time, I think, probably hundreds of thousands of records. So listening to him for the first time was kind of revelation. I mean, it sounded very familiar as somebody who'd kind of grown up in the UK for the first 10 years of my life and was familiar with both the reggae scene and sort of the social, cultural, political scene. So that sort of added to the fact that I had never heard his poetry before. So, of course, I began listening to more of his poetry, the first set of poems, which were very much about kind of internecine violence among black youth in the UK and police and state violence against black youth, particularly black men. It's largely what his early poetry focused on. And then some of his later poetry, which focused on both local social movements and particular events. There are a number of elegies also, including elegies to folks like Walter Rodney, Blair Peach, and other folks, and not an elegy, but a poem about Darcus Howe when he was incarcerated. And his poems that were released in the 1990s, which were sort of meditations on socialism. Some years ago, early 2000s, when I began thinking about, it was one of those moments where I was sort of thinking about the meaning of social transformation in our time, and the role that art, and particularly poetry, plays in sort of helping us think through those questions. It was only natural and logical that I would turn to Linton Kwesi Johnson's poetry, which I had began writing about a little bit. 2001, 2002, I began writing this book. The first draft of the manuscript was finished in 2002. In fact, it was finished just within a day or so before my daughter sitting over here was born, and in many ways was inspired by the fact that I was going to be a parent. And I was thinking about, well, what kind of world is my child going to sort of emerge and grow into? And, you know, what would you like that world to look like? So the basic premise of the book is that artists are often at the forefront of thinking through questions of creativity and social transformation because they sort of tap into those creative impulses just by virtue of being artists that often, quote unquote, ordinary folks do not, including social scientists and researchers, etc. They're not restricted by those boundaries and obstacles to creative thinking. And as a result, often have a great deal to tell us about what social change might look like. As I said before, Linton Kwesi Johnson's poetry, if we sort of look at it in terms of various stages or phases, you know, each one of those stages kind of captures a historical moment, not just in terms of Black British politics, but in terms of the history of social struggles and various social movements, the history of socialism, actually, particularly in the European, UK, and also Caribbean context. I basically write through his poetry to think through about, you know, let's call it a meditation on our social transformation, and to make the argument that non-artists who are politically concerned need to also try to tap into those creative impulses that artists, and particularly poets, have in order to find or think about creative alternatives to the present economic and political moment that we're in.